Hello everyone, welcome back. This is Elder Cracker, and today we are playing Dark and Darker. Now this is one of the multiple play tests that have came out for the game, so the game is still in development, but plenty of people have been able to sink in tons and tons of hours. And if you're anything like me, you've probably played a few games before in Dark and Darker where you screw around maybe with some randoms or with your friends where you guys all pick just one of the same class. Now, I actually went and did tests with each of these 6 classes to see which class is the best when all people are playing the same type. And I have compiled a tier list to see which ones are the best for your Dark and Darker fun time experience. Now, to keep things balanced, I made sure I used all of them in their default form, leaving them with only 1 perk and their 2 abilities to use. Everything else is out the window. I was not allowed to add perks because then you start getting into builds which could be more advantageous or more disadvantageous to certain classes. So, starting on the bottom of our list, I had to go with the Wizard. Unfortunately, a Wizard has already a high skill class, which makes it pretty difficult to use when you use a team with default perks and abilities. Now, Wizard is one of the classes that does strive on the more passives it does unlock, and that is one thing to keep in mind with these classes, is some start off very strong and are very beginner friendly, while others are not. The issue with Wizards is one already have a pretty low mobility, plus they are squishy. If you do not know, Wizards are a ranged class offering very little melee advantages except with the crystal sword and a quarterstaff. You can use the staff if you want, however, you're going to be at a huge disadvantage in melee. Cast times, you need to be careful with fireball procs, and you need to make sure, you don't you blow your fucking teammate up, as you saw here. Which comes to the next issue with Wizard, is the lack of resource management. There is no heals available in any slight. You have to find potions, you have to find bandages, you have to find campfires. None of their spells allow them to heal. On a good note though, the passive buffs that we could provide to one another were decent, but other classes managed to support one another significantly better. As you saw, Chain Lightning also, again, wrecked your friends. And again, if you guys are not playing with competent Wizard players, it's a huge risk to your team because Wizards have very powerful spells that could also endanger their teammates. So, next on the list is going to be Rogue. Now, this one might ruffle a few feathers because I get it, the point of Rogue. And just to clarify, one thing to keep in mind with these videos is that I have a specialization towards fighter and cleric. Cleric being my best character. So obviously I'm not going to perform each class at its best. However, with that being said, 3 rogue, unless you're playing a very niche type of gameplay, which granted rogue is supposed to play, you are going to have a hard time against a lot of the games. Combat, you need to be extremely map knowledgeable and also know how to use proper stealth. You need the element of surprise as a rogue. You can go in, and this is the issue, we chose poison weapon as our starting perk, and as good as poison weapons is, it does not do much once you die, right? It's a good cheese thing where you poison them and they're taking that passive damage, but if they take that passive damage after you've already been destroyed by a one-shot from a barbarian, it's pretty useless. I will say though, the reason why it's above Wizard is the high mobility and the ability to swoop through rooms faster. Now, obviously we tried to avoid fighting mobs as most as possible as the rogue. Even then, we were still found in situations where we had to fight. And because the starting rogue doesn't come with 2 daggers and just 1, it makes it a little bit more difficult to keep up with that DPS output, even with 3 people. Yes, you have a faster attack rate, and when we did get gank moments where all 3 of us jumped on a survivor, it was funny. And because it's a fun class to play, I put it above Wizard. Coming in at number 4 is the Barbarian. Now, the Barbarian is a very offense-based and obviously relies on taking damage to deal more damage. It's a very high-risk, high-reward class. Now, when all 3 people play it, you do sacrifice a ranged output of any sort. However, we did notice through the gameplay that they have great offense. Zombies and mummies are very easy to handle. PvP is decent, even against ballad teams. We did die a few times, but we also did succeed just as many times. It was a very 50-50. They're solid damage dealing. The issue comes with heals. However, again, barbarians do, if you are using berserker, they do thrive off of taking more damage, so it can be good. However, when you're playing with that low health and one low shot can take you out, expect to have casualties. So one person in particular that I noticed that barbarians struggled with are the skeleton champions. They can be a threat due to their speed and combo. When you are swinging that Dane axe, you will have an issue with recovering, and that's when you are your most vulnerable. And because you have no other person with a different type of move, I do recommend, if you can play with the trios at late, like when you acquire more gear, always have a felling axe as your secondary, because a felling axe is a little bit more powerful, but it's smaller and faster swings. Of course, that comes at the cost of range. However, you can make a swing a lot faster than if you use your Dane axe. So at number 3, I chose to put the fighter. So this was a tough one between this class and another, because both did very well, but due to a few passive perks that the other class has, I had to go with fighter for rank number 3. Now, it went well, and most of the time, most of the party did survive. We made a good amount of gold, good survivability. Shields do help with ranged combatants, so you can rush if you know how to use your shield properly. PvP is also very fun. You have a good amount of tanking. You guys can take a lot of beatings. Good combat speed. Even though I will say that the shields do help with archery. If you are not good with your shield, it can come at a cost. In a lot of situations, we noticed we had mages that would kill us, or archers who would still manage to hit us through our shields. Of course, that's not really the class's fault, more so our inability to block effectively. But out of the 10 games we did play with the fighter, we did notice that we only died once, like where the whole party got wiped. So it has good survivability, it has good damage, it's a fun class to play. You have a bit of offense and a bit of defense. So overall, it falls in place at number 3. Now, the second class, the second best class for an all-type trio, has to be the Ranger. Now, the Ranger has good speed, it has good survivability, it has a great food tech ability to allow it to regenerate 3 times 25 health, which is huge. The campfire it spawns with is another great thing, and when 3 people have it, that's 3 separate campfires you can utilize. They're not as fast as rogues for clearing rooms, but they are around just as fast, probably the second fastest. Looting is fast. Opening doors is fast. However, we did notice that tankier mobs do suck to go against. It's difficult because you have a bow and arrow, and unless you're using the spear perk as your first perk, which is what I did, and as you can see in my gameplay, I chose the spear perk that allowed me to use a spear, while my other 2 player friends were using their bows. This did optimize, and I believe maybe have swayed the results a little bit if we had, played purely all bow. I also noticed that the bear traps are very good with keeping players, and we did have a lot of success in PvP. Bear trapping at doors, holding them off, having a spear person hold corner and poke in this arrow the person at the door, you automatically have an advantage. So overall, a very good class that only really suffers against PvE. And this is probably no surprise to a lot of people if you've played the game a little bit, but number 1 has to be the Cleric. Now, the Cleric is basically your Holy Knight character. It has a good mix between defense and buffs and debuffs that it can provide. After playing these 10 games, we noticed that this is definitely the strongest class. It has a good amount of defense. It has a shield to block ranged fire. It has a amazing utility. Constant ally heals, constant self heals, and constant buffs for your team that can be cycled around from each other. That basically made survivability no problem. I will say though, even the number one spot doesn't have its flaws, because even though we did good against the undead, because we have undead slaying, we did still suffer a bit when it came to PvP play. We did not have the highest amount of damage being dealt because cleric is much more optimized against undead. However, we still did play defensively, and when we played defensively, we had a much more successful rate than when we played offensively. That's because cleric is a more defensive-based character. So as you can see in some of this gameplay, where we were holding our ground, we actually did better compared to when we were initiating. So we still did die. However, again, it is a very strong class, very good survivability. Everyone is the same mobility, so yes, you are a bit slow compared to other classes, but when everyone's at same speed, it really is okay. And yeah, those are the ranking of all these classes. Of course, this is just my opinion, and keep in mind, this game is still in playtest. We haven't been able to sync that much experience, and my best class is the cleric, so it might be a little bit biased due to performance. You know, I'm not as good as I am with rogue as I am with cleric, but I do have a decent understanding of the fundamentals of each class. So again, if you like this type of content, let me know, and make sure to hit that subscribe button and like this video if you want to see more stuff like this. As always, I want you guys to have a big dong and prosper, and I'll see you guys in the next video. Take it easy.